Hello, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. The topic of today's video is romantic and erotic obsession. So I'm going to be reading a little bit from Oscar Wilde's play Salome, and then I'll draw a few cards from my illustrated deck to give you some guidance on if you're working through these issues yourself. So if you're not familiar with Salome, the story of Salome, so it's a biblical story, but I'll mostly be discussing in the context of the play. So Salome was the daughter of this king, and she does this dance of the 7 veils, where she's being watched quite perversely by this group of men. But the one man who refuses to look at her is John the Baptist, and he calls her a harlot. He's disgusted by her, but she has this romantic or erotic, really, obsession with him, and in particular his hair. So at the end of the play, she asks for one thing, and she asks for John the Baptist's head on a plate, and she gets it, as you can see by this cover illustration. So I'll be reading from this monologue, the closing monologue of Salome. And I've loved this play since I was a little girl, and the illustrations have been quite formative for me by Aubrey Beardsley. This is the beautiful illustration where she's holding up John the Baptist's head. Wonderful. Alright, so this is the voice of Salome. Ah, thou wouldst not suffer me to kiss thy mouth, Iocannon. Well, I will kiss it now. I will bite it with my teeth as one bites a ripe fruit. Yes, I will kiss thy mouth, Iocannon. I said it. Did I not say it? I said it. Ah, I will kiss it now. But wherefore dost thou not look at me, Iocannon? Thine eyes that were so terrible, so full of rage and scorn, are shut now. Wherefore are they shut? Open thine eyes. Lift up thine eyelids, Iocannon. Wherefore dost thou not look at me? Art thou afraid of me, Iocannon, that thou wilt not look at me? And thy tongue, that was like a red snake darting poison, it moves no more. It speaks no words, Iocannon, that scarlet viper that spat its venom upon me. It is strange, is it not? How is it that the red viper stirs no longer? Thou wouldst have none of me, Iocannon. Thou rejectedst me. Thou didst speak evil words against me. Thou didst bear thyself toward me as a harlot, as to a woman that is wanton. To me, Salome, daughter of Herodias, princess of Judea. Well, I still live, but thou art dead, and thy head belongs to me. I can do with it what I will. I can throw it to the dogs and to the birds of the air. That which the dogs leave, the birds of the air shall devour. Ah, Iocannon, Iocannon, thou wert the man that I loved alone among men. All other men were hateful to me, but thou wert beautiful. Thy body was a column of ivory set upon feet of silver. It was a garden full of doves and lilies of silver. It was a tower of silver decked with shields of ivory. There was nothing in the world so white as thy body. There was nothing in the world so black as thy hair. In the whole world there was nothing so red as thy mouth. Thy voice was a censer that scattered strange perfumes, and when I looked on thee, I heard a strange music. Ah, wherefore didst thou not look at me, Iocannon? With a cloak of thine hands, and with a cloak of thy blasphemies, thou didst hide thy face. Thou didst put upon thine eyes the covering of him who would see his God. Well, thou hast seen thy God, Iocannon, but me, thou didst never see me. If thou hadst seen me, thou hadst loved me. I saw thee, and I loved thee. Oh, how I loved thee. I love thee yet, Iocannon. I love only thee. I am athirst for thy beauty. I am hungry for thy body, and neither wine nor apples can appease my desire. What shall I do now, Iocannon? Neither the floods nor the great waters can quench my passion. I was a princess, and thou didst scorn me. I was a virgin, and thou didst take my virginity from me. I was chaste, and thou didst fill my veins with fire. Ah, wherefore didst thou not look at me? If thou hadst looked at me, thou hadst loved me. Well, I know that thou wouldst have loved me, and the mystery of love is greater than the mystery of death. Well, quite profound. Something that's always stirred me and really caused some conflict in me was, did John the Baptist deserve it? Well, maybe. I mean, Salome's one-sided infatuation with him is a little bit disturbing, and the fact that because she can't have him, she demands his death just so she can have his severed head. That sounds like a bit of an ego problem on Salome's part, don't you think? But at the same time, he was a little bit cruel to her, calling her a harlot and all that. So, I think my final determination is, yes, he did deserve to be beheaded. Although it's sad that she only got to kiss him when his scarlet tongue was no longer alive. Oh my. Alright, so I'll pull a few cards from this deck that I've created myself. My own illustrations. and maybe give some guidance on the topic of romantic and erotic obsession. Maybe if there's one person that you're particularly obsessed with, like what they're thinking about you, or maybe how you should approach the situation. Tea. Okay, so I get the sense, like, this is in the sense of, like, tea. Like, there is some juicy situation going on here. And I think that this is the crux of, like, what creates a romantic obsession. Is, like, there's some interesting context where you've met someone or some complicated situation between the two of you that is not just some, like, ordinary, boring kind of, like, coffee date. Like, no, it might involve, like, a mutual friend, or it might involve, like, a workplace, or just some sort of situation where you kind of, there's this intrigue. Like, it feels like something out of a movie. It's not just every day. So I get the sense that this excitement is kind of perhaps what causes romantic obsession to develop, or maybe grow into something that's a little bit more unhealthy. Soup. Okay, so I get the sense that even though there's this, like, unhealthy, obsessive aspect to your dynamic, at the same time there is also a nourishing quality. Because of the fact that when you experience romantic love, you can really get close to a person in a way that you might not be able to otherwise. This, like, singular devotion to another person, and this looking into their soul, and this connection and, like, conversation that you share, it's so nourishing and healing that it really feels like consuming like a very fine broth that really heals you in some way. Let's see, maybe let's find out a little bit about the object of your obsession here. Fish. Okay, so this one, as you can see, the fish is going for the bait on the hook. So I get the sense that maybe this person really put the bait out for you, or maybe you were deceived in some way where you really thought you were entering into a situation innocently, and maybe you were on the same page, but what you didn't expect is that this person was actually baiting you to act in a certain way, and they were almost expecting your reaction. Maybe they've done this method before on other people and gotten the same reaction, or maybe they saw something particularly in you that they wanted to bring out, so they put out this bait that they knew would make you obsessed with them. We've got notebook. So again, like, I get the sense that this person was, like, taking notes on you. Like, maybe they really got a good read of you on your personality, and, like, maybe because you had this sort of romantic connection developing at first, maybe you opened up to them in a way that you wouldn't have opened up otherwise. And this really opened the door for them to be able to really make observations on how you might react in a certain situation, so that they might be able to sort of play you a little bit in some ways. And in this sense, like, you're at their whim once they've really gotten a read on you and, like, how you'll react to their treatment of you. Property. So I get the sense that maybe this person is, like, perhaps wealthy in some ways, perhaps especially in a material sense, but also it could also be the case that, they possess something that you're envious of. And so maybe this is why you have this sort of obsession with them. So, like, maybe it could relate to something like they're more developed in some ways, like maybe in their career, or maybe in the community, that has granted them certain permissions, and privileges that you don't really have access to. And so maybe in some ways this obsession towards them is, like, less focused on them and maybe more focused on what you want to attain, and maybe, like, trying to put yourself in their shoes. But instead of trying to figure out how to get that for yourself, you're sort of using your relationship to them to sort of stand in for developing this yourself, where you think that if you have them, you can have what they have, instead of trying to build this for yourself. Hey, interesting. And maybe let's lean a little bit into the erotic obsession side, okay? Because I think that's the interesting part, isn't it? Curtain. Ooh, okay, so I get the sense that where this erotic obsession comes in is that this person is probably a very good actor in some ways. Like, maybe they can really do a bit very well that can kind of entertain you and make you laugh, but then in the same sense, like, they can really play any role in any situation, Like, they could play the tender lover, or they could play, the violent brute, and perhaps specifically in the bedroom, that they can really put on a show for you that can be quite entertaining. And this is really, like, where your obsession is based, because they're not just like some singular personality that you're attracted to, but it's their ability to embody these archetypes that you're so drawn to, and that they flawlessly understand these archetypes and what makes them appealing, so that they can embody them. Okay, let's draw another card on the topic of erotic obsession. This is the fun part, honestly. Ooh, token. Okay, so I get the sense that maybe to you, they're the singular obsession of like, you know, you really can't imagine anyone else in the world being like this or like having a relationship like this again. But to them, you are just a token and like interchangeable, and there's many of you. And maybe in some ways this almost deepens your obsession, because like Salome, you're obsessed with what you can't have. And the fact that this person doesn't see you the same way as you see them, it really triggers something in your ego that makes you want them to want you, and not just be a token, but you really want them to see you, to see your individuality. And like Salome said, like, if you had seen me, you would have loved me. And it's really this feeling of like, if you could only prove yourself in some way, then this person would reciprocate your feelings towards them. But you're so focused on trying to get them to reciprocate these feelings that it turns into this sick obsession that is really not healthy at all. I mean, is obsession ever healthy? Maybe like an interest is healthy, but an obsession, I think that's going a little too far. So maybe let's draw some cards on like how you could resolve this situation and like either turn it into a healthy situation or maybe close it out, if that is the case for you. Incense. So I get the sense that quiet contemplation is of the utmost importance in this situation, especially when you're obsessed with someone. It could be so easy to really throw yourself into this connection and really spend a lot of time with them. But when you're getting lost in this, you're really absorbing so much of their energy and maybe like diluting your own energy, perhaps being confused about your own intuition, about your own thoughts, especially if this person, is very attractive to you. You're more likely to take what they say as the truth and be swayed by their opinions. So I get the sense that this card is really telling you, like, you need to spend some time alone contemplating, like, what you really want and what your feelings really are towards this person. Because when you're around them, they have this intoxicating feeling, and like Salome mentioned, like no wine or apples could satiate me. Like, it's like you only want them. But spending some time alone really reminds you, like what your priorities in life are, of like, being able to think for yourself and like care for yourself, and not just throw yourself at another person. Antenna. So like I was mentioning, like, I think that you're really picking up on this person's energy. And so I get the sense that you might be kind of receiving, what the signals that they're putting out, and you might be sending that back to them. So I get the sense like this is what makes it a connection, is that you're kind of mirroring some aspect of like how they see you, how they treat you. And so there's this very much like this back and forth communication aspect to it. But I also get the sense that maybe in some ways like the wires are crossed a little bit, of like, you kind of want this like direct signal of like understanding and communication. But because, there's this like buildup of wires on the cable tower here, like the messages are not quite getting through, or like maybe messages from outside, one single cable that you're trying to draw a connection to. Like maybe they're getting signals from all sorts of other towers too. And this could be something that's challenging to forming a healthy connection, because you can't really discern like, which signals are healthy, which signals are like coming from you or from them or from someone entirely outside of your dynamic. Focus. So I get the sense that, like, similar to the incense card, like, this is really telling you that if you want to resolve the situation and like not let it spiral into some unhealthy obsession, like, you really need to focus on like what are the healthy aspects, what are the quality aspects of like why you started liking this person in the first place, before it turned into an obsession. Like, where was this warmth and genuine affection coming from? And like going back to that will help you build from the ground up this healthier way of orienting yourself towards this person, instead of getting caught up in like the point where it has developed to now, where like with the story of Salome, like the ego takes over so much that it becomes destructive. And like, like romance and eroticism, I mean, maybe eroticism is quite can be destructive, but romance in particular, like, should be more focused on building something than destroying another person out of pettiness or out of jealousy. So really, like, focusing on, you know, why you even wanted to pursue something romantic with this person in the first place. It might help you build a healthier way in yourself of, like, orienting towards them. Cake. Okay, so I get the sense that in order to make this situation healthy, it needs to be pleasurable for the both of you. So I get the sense that sometimes where obsession comes in is, like, it becomes quite one-sided. And I think it's quite often the case that maybe the other person in this dynamic is the one getting their cake. And for you, it's almost like you don't have that aspect that is enjoyable to you. And that's where the obsession and bitterness comes in. Is like, why are they getting a full enjoyment out of this situation and I have to suffer and I don't get to eat my cake too? And especially if it's an obsession, right? Because you can't imagine, like, something outside of this dynamic. Whereas with this person who is maybe a little bit more detached, or maybe they are healthy in some ways, but they just don't reciprocate your feelings. Like, they are able to see outside the bigger picture and not feel like they need to get all their needs met in this dynamic, but that they could go elsewhere for their cake. But when it comes to romance, sometimes it is nice to share a slice of cake together. All right, and now let's pull a card, like, what is this person thinking? Like, how do they feel towards you? Mouse. Ooh, okay, so this is really interesting because it's like, who is the mouse in the dynamic? Like, I get the sense that, so someone set the trap here, and someone is the mouse. And I get the sense that maybe you're the person setting the trap here, and the other person is, like, more on the timid, mousy side in some ways. So even though the bait card came up with, like, in the initial formation of your relationship, I get the sense that when it comes to the more, like, obsessive state of, like, where it is now, like, you're now the one setting the trap, and maybe they're almost, like, a little bit scared off by it because maybe they can tell that you're kind of, like, scheming, where, like, originally you came into the situation with this, like, really innocent, like, just pure sort of wanting to develop this romantic connection. But, you know, as their treatment of you maybe shifted into something a little bit more manipulative, like with the bait card here, or something maybe a little unbalanced with the cake card, is that you kind of almost started mirroring their actions, and it's like, okay, well, now I need to set the trap. I need to play their game. Like, it makes me think of Mousetrap, the board game. Let's get a random association. So, and now it's, like, almost scaring them off because it's like the mouse knows that the trap is not going to be good for it. So that's just, like, they're just a little bit put off by it because they can tell that you're now, like, you know, giving them a taste of their medicine and kind of scheming back, which, like, could maybe tell them that they need to reform their ways if, like, they're starting to get uncomfortable when they realize, like, you're doing what they did to you, and they're starting to realize, like, oh, maybe this is actually not the best way to treat someone. But then for you, like, it's almost like you're now poisoning your mind and your actions because you're sinking down to their level, and you're kind of forgetting about the innocence and purity of romantic love, and really getting into that, like, erotic obsession and, like, desire to consume another person or own them entirely. All right, snake. Okay, so I do get the sense that this person is being deceptive towards you, unfortunately. Like, in the case of obsession, you know, the other person tends to be, like, they have some ego problem going on where they will maybe say things or do things in order to feed their ego. And instead of, like, actually being honest or, you know, care for you in some way, like, they're really just acting from the ego. And so I get the sense that, you know, this person, like, like the viper tongue of John the Baptist, you know, maybe they've, like, spoke some harsh words to you, and, like, maybe not all those words were true, but really what they were trying to do is establish that sort of dynamic where you are trying to win their affection and, like, prove yourself to them, because, like, once they set up this dynamic of, like, being a little bit manipulative and making you feel like you're not quite good enough, then this is like where you start to become really obsessed. Because, in this healthy dynamic where you're really coming to each other with this like sense of truthfulness and, not having that poisoned tongue kind of like criticism, right? You don't really get obsessed because it's, you're kind of getting an even, steady flow of like, validation, but like a healthy sort of validation of just like affirming your connection. But where it becomes obsession is like when you think like, I need to show this person that I'm good enough for them. Like, I need to prove them wrong, these assumptions they have about me. But I think maybe what you don't realize is that, maybe they didn't necessarily even believe all these things that they said to you. Maybe in some ways they were like just trying to set up that dynamic where you feel inferior or you feel insecure, even if they knew that these things weren't true about you. And butter knife. Okay, so I get the sense that, this person might appear a little bit scary to you, especially because of these manipulative qualities. But I get the sense that they're not going to hurt you in any way that is really like meaningful, honestly, because I think that if you approach the situation with a healthy air of detachment, you can kind of understand where the boundaries lie of like, am I giving too much of myself? Is this really becoming like an unhealthy obsession, or is this kind of like a fun obsession? Like, sometimes you just need to get a little bit obsessed. And, I also get the sense that maybe sometimes when people are being manipulative, it's not necessarily always out of like an intention to hurt someone. It could just be like that's what they're used to. Is like, to get what I want, I have to manipulate, and like, use my charm, and really like let ego play into the development of a relationship, because that's just all that they're familiar with. And, it's really unfortunate and it's very unhealthy. And, if you're not in a place to like form a connection with someone who's not far enough on their healing journey that they can treat people with kindness and respect, like, I don't think you should be putting yourself in that situation. But at the same time, like, I think because it is the butter knife, like there is healing possible for this person. Like at the end of the day, they don't have sharp edges intrinsic to them. But from afar, it seems as if they, really do have the possibility to hurt you. All right, so maybe let's draw a few more cards on like kind of concluding out how you should feel about this connection, and like steps going forward. Map. Okay, so this is very relevant of like, what are your next steps and like planning out the road ahead of you. So I think it's really good to have a sense of what you want out of a romantic or erotic connection before you get into it. Because sometimes when you go in without a map, it's almost easy to get obsessed in a way, because you're kind of, instead of thinking about like what your needs are and what your desires are, you're thinking about like, just this person. And like, as long as this person likes me, everything will be okay. Like, as long as they reciprocate my feelings, like things will work out. But you haven't really looked at the bigger picture of like the roadmap of your life, of like long-term compatibility, or like what your needs are in a relationship. And so this can kind of like cause this obsession to really fester, because if you haven't planned out and like communicated your needs to this other person, like it's going to be this mismatched feeling where like they're always missing your expectations, and then you're getting more upset, and then in the sense this can breed more obsession, because you're like, now I need to fix them, I need to show them like how they can be so that we can be together happily. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, you should have established this from the beginning so that you would know if like compatibility was possible. But at the same time, if this person's a little snaky, maybe you laid out your roadmap to them very clearly and they kind of nodded along with it and said, okay, like this sounds good. But really they had no intentions of actually like living up to any of the standards that you presented quite clearly. And maybe they themselves don't really have a map. So in the moment they kind of said like, kind of a similar thing of like, they just wanted to be with you. So they kind of went along with whatever you were saying, even if that necessarily wasn't something that they actually wanted. Because maybe they just didn't even know what they want because they hadn't put in the work. Very common occurrence. All right, rock. Okay, so I get the sense that like you're the rock in this dynamic. Is like you already have a very stable sense of self. You already understand what you want, and you have like more of the consistent action because you're acting from a place of truth and like honesty and yourself, because you know who you are. So you know what actions are aligned with yourself. So I think maybe like where obsession comes in is like this inconsistent behavior. So maybe on the part of the other person, like they don't really know who they are. They don't really know what they want. And so this kind of acting of like hot and cold, or, not being solid, but they're kind of like sinuous, like they kind of, one day they're one thing, then they're saying one thing, and then the next day they're like acting completely differently and like saying the complete opposite of what they were saying previously. So I get the sense that like your stability in yourself is really important, and like maintaining your connection to self is so important, and to not get lost in obsession. And okay, this is starting to sound like a really hopeless reading. Like, it kind of sounds like you should just like cut this person off, because obviously they don't deserve your obsession. But when you're obsessed with someone, you really want to make it work, right? Like, okay, let's see. Is there a way to make this work? Please, cards. Please, cards. Projector. Okay, so I get the sense that probably both ways in this connection, there's this level of projection going on where you're just both projecting your deepest insecurities and fears onto the other person. And then this is like manifesting into actions where like maybe they projected something onto you of like expecting you to act a certain way. And so then maybe you're like kind of walking on eggshells, making sure you don't like trigger them in this way. And then they end up doing that thing that they were so worried about you doing. And then it's almost like confusing, because it's like, oh, you were just projecting that the whole time. Like, and then you almost feel like, why did I change my behavior so much just to like accommodate your fears, when really it was like a projection from you. And then it's just like maybe you're going on with similarly of like the things that you're worried about them doing to you, or like things that you've done in the past or that you might do to them. And, in a way, this is almost like, it could be a healing connection. I mean, every connection offers a possibility for healing. Like, obviously, if there's some abusive or toxic dynamics going on, like, that is not necessarily a place for healing. But, working through these core wounds and traumas that everyone has, like, it can be very painful, and it can feel sometimes, veering into toxicity, just because, like, people who haven't worked on themselves, or, like, emotional maturity and like a healthy level of detachment and just like knowing how to treat other people, like they can sometimes act out in ways that is just incredibly hurtful. But at the same time, like, for you as someone who's put on this earth to like be a healer to other people and like help them grow, sometimes you can adopt enough detachment for yourself to be like, I'm going to help this person learn their lesson. And so maybe you have a little bit of a savior complex if you're the type of person who calls yourself a spiritual healer, and you go around saying like, it's my job to help everyone and figure out what their emotional wounds are. Snat. Okay, so I think this is a good card to close out on, of course, with a big snat and the little snats beside it. So I get a sense that you really need to have like this inner sense of leadership, especially when it comes to a relationship, because I think sometimes when you give over the reins to another person, you might think like, maybe you're stuck in some like gender roles of like a man should be the lead in the relationship, or like maybe you have this like dynamic of like, well, I want to be the more submissive one in a relationship. Like, I just want the other person to like make the decisions. Like, this is where things are going to go off the rails, because then they're leading the way too much, and you're not like an equal participant, or like, especially if you are the more emotionally mature one, you should be the leader in like making decisions. Like, you shouldn't just leave it up to them on how the relationship is going to go, especially if you are like a little bit more conscious and healed, because then you're going to be so frustrated and be like, this is such an awful dynamic that has been set up by someone who has the mental maturity of a child. So yeah, like really having like a really good sense of leadership in yourself, and like nurturing for those like smaller like wounded parts of yourself. So like really being kind to your inner child and their inner child too, because as you can see, there's 3 snats. So who are these 3 children? Maybe the third one is like a child that you guys may share. Oh man, that's scary to think about. But like really just like giving this leadership and like comforting parental presence, because I think a lot of times when you're veering into this romantic obsession, like I think it has a lot to do with feeling unwanted and uncared for and like undesired as a child. And so a lot of times like what this person needs is not so much like this deep romantic crazy kind of obsession and like ups and downs and all that sort of business, but like really maybe what they need is like this sort of parental gentleness, kindness, and really this like true unconditional love that a parent is supposed to show to their child. And I think that there's a way to put this unconditional love in a romantic context, while still having romantic love as like sort of different components that are kind of at play with each other. where like the unconditional love is the basis of like your friendship and how you approach other people in the world generally. And then the romantic love is kind of like the cherry on top of like what differentiates a sort of a friendship, or like even a friends with benefits, or like, you know, kind of a marriage where it's like friendly but like there's not really that passion. That the romantic love is like the passion, the cherry on top that comes after you've built this foundation of trust in this really like caring and unconditionally loving setting. Whereas if you start from the basis of this romantic love and passion and eroticism, like this is what creates that level of obsession, because you don't have the healthy baseline. All you have is the excitement and craziness of it. Alright, so I think we'll wrap up our little reading there. I hope this was somewhat helpful or entertaining to you guys. And if you're going through a case of romantic or erotic obsession right now, all I can say is I'm so sorry, and Salome did nothing wrong, and you're within your full rights to do exactly what she did. Alright, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, if you have any comments, if you want more videos like this, or like in a different vein, if you like the dramatic reading, let me know. I would love to do more readings. Like, I love sharing my, I have this massive book collection, so like reading excerpts is always a lot of fun, because I feel like, you know, I'm familiar with the book, so I can kind of pick out, you know, a few lines that are the most interesting to you, so you don't have to read the whole thing, but you can get a little taste of it. Maybe it'll, you know, like the saying goes, one book opens another, and maybe it'll intrigue you to follow up on some research interests, which I would highly recommend over becoming romantically obsessed with someone. Go read a book. Go study. Alright, so thank you again, and I hope to see you in the next video.